What's up, everyone? Welcome to Cortex Labs, the podcast where innovation meets conversation. I'm your today's host, Matthew Smith, the founder of Cortex Lab, an AI development company at the forefront of cutting edge technology. Join me bi-weekly as we dive into insightful discussions with tech pioneers, gaining valuable insights to keep you informed about the ever-evolving industry. It's not just an exploration of tech, it's about forging meaningful connections and delivering real value to our audience. I would like to welcome our first guest, Bayo Okusanya, a 7-year VC veteran at Chaac Ventures, first hire, angel investor in 25 plus different tech startups, LP in 5 venture funds, and alumni of Princeton class of 2020. How you doing, man?
I'm good. I appreciate the intro. Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to speak with you, Matt.
Likewise, man. Likewise. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's good. It's good to finally do this podcast. I know we've been talking about it for a while. So
Yeah.
yeah. So what's new? I know you had some involvement at Princeton. You had a mentor. His name was Luke, right? Tell me a little bit
Yeah.
about
Yeah. So Luke Armour, he was from the class of 2013. He played lacrosse at Princeton, went into VC upon graduating. Had probably what would be considered a non-traditional path then into VC. He decided to start right out of college, which for the longest time, VCs didn't feel or weren't considered qualified unless they had built a tech startup of their own and exited it. And then, they went into investing, or you went the MBA path. So Luke and I went straight into VC. Me, probably a little younger than him because I started as an undergrad. But I think he saw something in me and what I was building on my own time on campus at Princeton. And it was just, a meeting of the minds. It was one of those things. And I can jump more into it. But what I'm doing now is really a culmination of that early exposure I had to VC. So I joined in 2017 as a freshman in college. I had always intended to build tech startups. VC was my way into understanding how tech startups work, what could go wrong, how they, build companies and raise capital. Um, and then in 2022, I transitioned to being a full-time startup founder. So now
that.
I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called NPC Labs. We create connected products. So we have a network of white label suppliers, and we can scale consumer products for any brand or creator or content creator, athlete, influencer, pretty much anyone that you consider a community leader.
Mhm.
But we also use that product as an access point into your digital ecosystem and to build more commerce-based relationships with your community so you can actually sustain a brand and a business off of your intellectual property. The other thing that I work on is Enox, which is an AI education company. So it's sort of like an AI co-pilot that exists as you're learning. It's trained on the curriculum. It can generate new curriculum, but you can ask it any question about what you're studying.
Wow.
And, Enox will answer it. We create AI avatars that can speak in any language or exist in any cultural or local context. So, we're trying to meet underrepresented and underserved populations with the educational resources that they pretty previously had no access to. So,
Yeah, and that's a
those
big
are, yeah,
that was a big um, the thing going on with AI, finding that representation um, in AI. So it's good that you guys are doing. And how are you guys going about doing that? Plugging that
Yeah,
representation.
that's a great question. I mean, one, it starts with the founder and the team. The way he's built, his name's Vincent Reed. That's the CEO and founder. And the way he's built his team has been with diverse experiences and diverse people involved. So, he comes from a difficult background. He grew up in the foster care system.
Hmm.
He bounced around from home to home. He didn't get his education until later than most. And even then, most foster care children don't have a bachelor's degree or exist in the startup ecosystem in the
Yeah,
capacity that Vincent has managed to break every barrier in his way. So education's big for him.
yeah,
Um, and it's also reflected in the communities we serve. So one of the bigger communities that we're serving are prison systems, right? So
okay,
people that are trying to transition back into society, and we're trying to reduce recidivism, which is essentially, the tendency for an inmate to reoffend and go back into prison.
yeah,
So these courses that Enox both generates and teaches actually can lead to a high school diploma now.
wow,
Better than a
that's
GED, like an actual high school diploma that you can take into the workforce and get, a different quality of job than before. So that's the sort
yeah,
of thing that we're trying to do to help society and leave a positive legacy and actually leverage. I've been very privileged in my early career, so I always like to do things that give back as well, um, while I'm pursuing my dreams. Right?
that's amazing, man. Honestly,
Yeah.
and yeah, I think revisitation happens usually because there's a lack of education, and the lack of education leads to not having enough money, and then they have to go back and resort to selling drugs or doing something just to take care of
Right.
themselves, right? So it's kind of just a toxic loophole, and that's a big mission you guys have. Amazing. And I know you were doing something before in undervalued communities in at Princeton. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. I've worn many different hats. So back at Princeton, my freshman year, I my first semester, my first entrepreneurship experience was this conference called Envision, where
Hmm.
we bring professors, grad students, scientists, policymakers, philosophers to campus to talk about emerging technologies. So we were talking about AI safety in like 2016,
Wow.
but
Ahead
it
of the
wasn't
curve.
cool. Yeah, so that was my first entrepreneurship. I was the financial coordinator and
Hmm.
CFO of the conference. So at that point, it was the biggest budget. It was like $40,000, the biggest budget I'd seen,
Yeah.
you know, up until that point. So it was definitely throwing me right into the deep end. Um, and the following semester, I uh, got this email from an upperclassman, um, Chris Shin, right,
Mm,
a friend of mine till this day, and he was starting this club on campus called Princeton Empower, and it was
mm,
all about teaching financial literacy to um, underserved populations. So we taught classes for the first gen low income students on financial literacy. We wanted
mhm.
to take the model that we were creating and take it to cities like Trenton, um, and that was born out of my background. My family are Nigerian immigrants.
Mhm.
We're first generation Americans. And my parents, I watched them come to the United States. They're medical professionals, so they had to start from the bottom and re-get their certifications here in the U.S.
It's difficult.
And over time, I just watched how they've made like all these different financial um, hiccups and it was really just from a lack of information. So I wanted to close that gap and early on in my career.
Wow. So Onyx is just perfect alignment for what you're already doing in Princeton. See how
Yeah,
God works?
it's fun. Yeah. I went from teaching it to now creating or working on AI that will teach it to a much
Yeah,
bigger population. Yeah.
that's amazing, man. What's the go to market strategy for that? What do you guys have?
Yeah. So we have relationships with prison hardware providers.
Mhm.
Particularly, there's a company from the Princeton network called Nucleus that
Okay.
works with prisons in the United States and I think some abroad. So they're a partner of ours. We also work with other prison platforms from like organizations that staff, organizations that create government or fulfill government contracts and federal and state contracts
Mhm.
for education and government upskilling too. So like a lot of one of the big government mandates in like 2024 is to upskill the employees, right, for the next generation
Mhm.
of technology, right? I think the governor of New Jersey, Governor Murphy, just signed or started a partnership with Princeton University to create an AI hub here in New Jersey. And one of the big mandates for the AI hub is how can we train the 60,000 or more employees in New Jersey, right? All the skills they need for, you know, the next 20, 30, 40 years, right? Things are changing quickly. So
Extreme. Yes. Sorry for the
yeah,
background.
with yeah, let me turn that off. But yeah, essentially like we're meeting the need where it is, whether that's in upskilling programs, corporate training programs, government training programs, prison systems that want to, work on prison reform and reduce recidivism. I always say that word wrong. It's so hard.
Good.
And K through 12 programs.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy how fast AI is moving in just all different landscapes and industry. So, but that one's I think that's probably one of the best use cases that I've seen so far. Is with Onyx. So, congrats to that, man. Honestly, huge.
Yeah.
Um,
Thank you.
yeah. So, how do you go about, I guess, finding the companies that you want to work with or the companies that you invested in? So, you have 25 plus different investments, right? Is that correct? Or
Yeah,
yeah.
that's correct. Um, and that sounds more impressive than the reality of it. Like sometimes it's not the largest check, right?
Yeah.
Um, we're young professionals, right? And we're still working our way up. But I always promise that, even if I'm one of the smaller checks in the round, I'm going to provide some of the most impact for you.
Mhm.
So I usually go to bat for founders with investors that I know or I scout for.
Mhm.
Strategic introductions to partners, advisors, community leaders that can help them get their first customers or users or pilots together. Um, I also make it a habit to invest in things that I use. So
Okay.
if I find an app and I love it, right, I might reach out to the founder um, and chat with them. And if I like it, and or if I see like the potential to collaborate with them with my existing portfolio,
Mhm.
it might be a target for investment. So, and that way, I only invest in my circle of competency, so things that I understand.
Mhm.
If I don't understand it, then I'm probably not the best teammate for the founder.
That makes sense. Makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense. So what since there's probably the large amount of this audience is in AI, in Web3, they're founding, they want to build something with AI, or there's you know, businesses that want to implement AI. How do you think businesses and new founders should go about implementing AI?
Yeah. Well, if you go on my Twitter right now, there's my recent retweet was a tweet that I made in March on March 10th, 2023, where I encourage people to start leveraging AI in their businesses. And then I don't link, but I number about 30 different AI companies that I felt could help you with different aspects of your business, from
Mhm.
branding to copyright or copy text, to uh, design. There's also like a simple thing that I did when I was creating products for NPC Labs is, okay, here's like some high level details about this product. Can you create the product description for me? Right.
Mhm.
And it would create it for me. Right. Um, Things like that. Right. I use AI in my newsletters to do all the graphics. Um,
Mhm.
I use AI as a co-pilot sometimes, right? Something that's more um, contextualized and straight to the point than like a Google search to figure
Yeah.
out different things that I don't understand or things that I need to figure out. In the future, I might even use AI as a developer, right, to make
Yeah.
simple applications or features that I want to create for my product. Not quite there yet because I can't independently verify the code myself, but
Mhm.
it's getting much better at doing these things. So I think there's a let me search it up before I I give it out, but I'm pretty sure there's a database of AI platforms called like there's an AI for that.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
I think I've heard of that.
yeah,
It's
okay, it still exists.
I can't remember who it was, but they're saying AI is the worst that it'll ever be right now.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
keep thinking about that. I'm like, wow, dude, for it to be for it to be this good and save so much time, and then now it's getting to the point of reducing so much cost of labor, um, like Onyx, right? Helping 60,000 different employees. That's a lot of manpower to be able to teach, right, and to consistently teach and update people. So to even think about that, that's we're just in the beginning, right? Just a start. So
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people fear that AI is going to replace their function in the
mhm.
workplace. That's one way to think about it, but I tend to not look for I look for the optimistic case in things.
Yeah,
So, you know, AI can be a very good co-pilot and make it so that you can function better at your job. Whether
yeah,
you're a designer, an engineer, a business leader, right? You can use AI to accelerate literally wherever there's a bottleneck. Even if it's like, okay, there's a cold start problem, you can ask the AI to give you 10 ideas for any particular topic or problem, and that can get you started. Um, so if you find the way AI can fit into your existing workflow, you're probably going to be able to 10x the next uh, employee, right, or the next entrepreneur or investor. If you start just getting the hang of it, it's
yeah,
sort of like discovering the internet in 1990.
yeah. It seems
Yeah,
like we're right there again, right at
yeah, we're pretty much. It's going to be different, but similar.
yeah.
I feel. Yeah.
History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. That's one way to say it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I noticed you have a personal investments as well. I think you have two. Is that correct? Is
so actually, so in total, I probably have touched in some capacity through my various investor roles over the last 7 years, over 40 startups.
Mhm,
Chaac itself, at the time of my exit, had about 20 portfolio companies.
mhm,
So the other like 20 or so startups are things that I've personally been involved with or taken an interest with.
okay,
My first investment was in an African founder, actually,
mhm,
building for the continent. Uh, there was a platform called Flary. So they help you buy insurance for your family members back home if you're an immigrant in another country. So you
that's
can
really
keep
smart.
your family covered. So that, like, and again, my family has been through that same issue where it's like we're doing very well,
Mhm,
right? Or well relatively to whatever, the currency's doing, naira in Nigeria. So we want to actually try to support those family members. And Flary was a program that my mom actually used to help some family members. So,
wow.
those are sort of things that um, I'll personally get involved in,
Mhm,
because I usually have like an emotional connection with the problem they're solving. So
yeah,
I understand it. Yeah.
which makes you a good investor.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
where do you see Africa going in terms of new tech, Web3, all of that? I know there's a lot of buzz in Africa about it coming up and being a superpower or whatever in tech. So, where do you think? What is your kind of your vision for that, and how do you see yourself playing a role?
Yeah. So, I think the future of Africa is rich because um, we've accelerated the information era that America has already went through,
Mhm.
where Africans kind of skipped to the mobile era quicker than most, and now they're skipping to the blockchain and the AI era quicker
Yeah,
than most. So like I'm much more comfortable talking about some of these things with African professionals in tech because they are seeing activity and adoption maybe much quicker than it's weird that way, right? America might get to something first, but the opportunity might be biggest if you take that same thing and go to like Africa or Southeast Asia or Latin America, which has certainly been the case. So, back at Princeton, I was involved in this organization called the Africa Summit at Princeton.
hmm
It was founded by Bunmi Otegbade,
okay,
a friend of mine. He was a grad student. And Africa Summit organization had the president of Ghana come to Princeton's campus for the first time and meet President Ives Gruber.
wow,
Um, so they were making big impact, and I joined as the VP of Finance. And me and Bunmi originated the new venture competition on Princeton's campus for African startups. So we got to see, the different activity products, startups that were coming out of Africa. It originally started with a lot of fintech, which made a lot of sense because, that's probably one of the key problems that Africa has with its government, the trust over the money supply, right? There's
exactly.
a lot of corruption. There's a lot of, currency debasement,
There's a lot
inflation.
going on here. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
there's
So
more
like,
covered up.
yeah, whatever like the West goes through, imagine that dialed to like a higher degree, let's
Yeah.
say, in like an emerging country. So I think that's why like things like crypto seem way more promising if you're in the third world
Hmm.
or you're in an emerging economy, because here is a currency that's accessible if you have an internet connection and can't be debased by your government or stolen from you.
Hmm.
So that might not mean much to the West, but it means a lot if you're like growing up in Venezuela or you're growing up in Nigeria right now. So at like NPC Labs, one of our head of product is a Nigerian developer. His name's Francis Igbariki. He's been working with me since the founding of the company. So I consider him a founding team member. And he tells me all the time how much excitement there is for things like blockchain technology,
Yeah.
AI, because there's so much green space to create something and just change the course of, your family's history, right? There's a lot of competition here in the United States for some of these technologies already. There's a
Hmm.
complete white space to grow in Africa. So, by 2030, I think there's going to be 1.5 billion people in
Hmm.
Africa or more. That's going to be, you know,
Wow.
arguably the largest population for any continent. I think it's going
Hmm.
to be on par with Asia. Um, and then you have, the fact that like most of those people are going to be under 25 years old. The biggest youth population in the world.
Hmm.
So put all that together, and you've got the makings of a revolution.
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah, yeah,
That's extremely
um,
powerful.
yeah. So I
About
mean,
time.
one thing we're doing, yeah, just to add one thing we're doing at NPC Labs is trying to get distribution partners in Africa for these products that we're creating. Right. Each of the product that digital access pass that comes with it is based off of NFT technology. So
Hmm.
we're working with a South African sports merchandising company
Okay.
right now to ship to local teams these like connected jerseys and products, and it's an exciting thing for like the fans
Hmm.
in the territory. So
Wow, amazing. Amazing.
yeah,
Where do you see NPC going the next 5, 10 years?
oh yeah. So I see us becoming almost like a Fanatics or an Amazon for Web3. And what I mean
Hmm.
by that is, I'll start with Fanatics, right? Fanatics model, from my understanding, is they have a license to print from all the major sports leagues. So the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, the Premier League, you name it, they probably have like a license to print. So over time, their brand becomes the authenticator of the market. So if you get a product from Fanatics, then it's, officially licensed. And like that, they're able to get into merchandising, collectibles. I think they bought an NFT company. I think they bought Tops too. If I'm wrong, excuse me. Um, and they're essentially helping these global franchises scale. Um, Now I see, what's going on in the creator economy. There's about 500 million people that self-identify as content creators, and like 75% of Gen Z want to be content creators. And then you have like 2.5 billion or more active social media accounts.
Yeah.
So there's this whole social commerce revolution that's happening.
Hmm.
And all of these content creators are developing their own brands.
Yeah.
And they're looking for ways to monetize the communities that they're growing. So what MPC is trying to do is develop the infrastructure to help them scale product infrastructure for their communities, connect with that community, grow that community, and build an automated monetizable business.
Wow.
So we want to plug in wherever social commerce is. We want to get like a license to print from each of these small up and coming creators and brands, and we can work with the largest content creators in the world. We'd love to work with like a Mr. Beast, right?
Yeah,
Or
that's
I love content creators. I'm a content creator myself. I've been one
yeah.
for like 5 years now. So our goal would be to be like the fanatics for this space, where people look at us and we're creating the authentic products, and these products are verifiable on chain, like with a blockchain based
Mhm.
backend, right? So everyone knows who owns what, right? What the provenance of each piece is that comes from our marketplace.
Mhm.
And there can't be any counterfeits, which is
Yeah,
like a multi-billion-dollar problem. Counterfeit goods on other e-commerce
yes.
platforms,
Yeah.
um, and Amazon, because Amazon's the best fulfillment partner in the world, and that's what we want to be for the creators and the brands that we work with.
Mm. Wow, that's amazing,
Yeah,
man. Honestly. And
thank
how
you.
do you go about building your team? Because it takes a very strong team to be able to accomplish something like that. What do you look for in, I guess, those superstars?
You cut off a little, but you said, how do I go about building?
How do you go about
Uh,
building that team? Because to be able to
okay.
accomplish something like Amazon and be able to accomplish something like Fanatics, you need a very strong team, right? So what do you look for in those members, in those team members, in those superstars?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I'm not the number one team developer in the world yet, but I look for passion and commitment,
Hmm.
right? In my early team members, they seem to be as passionate about the problems we're solving
Hmm.
and the communities we're serving as I am. Um, and that's important for when things get difficult.
Yeah.
I look for resiliency, right? If a problem seems difficult on the surface, you need to be able to dig past and stay longer with that problem than most people are comfortable with, in
Hmm.
order to derive some real insight about an issue. Um, so I look for that, and that requires patience.
Hmm.
Um, and Yeah, I'm very much organically inclined, where um, you know, I will meet individuals that I click with,
Hmm.
and we tend to self-select for each other, so it's a two-way street. And if we continue to grow and collaborate and it makes a lot of sense, then we join forces, and I onboard them to our team. Now, that's not going to be the perfect process for like the next stage, right? It
Yeah.
works very well during early stage, because you don't want to uh, just put any sort of team together just to check boxes,
Yeah.
right? You
Exactly.
really want people that you have a strong relationship with, or can see a strong relationship with outside the workplace as well.
Hmm.
Um, but we'll try and take these clues and implement it into our hiring and onboarding process as we scale.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. And then so you're similar to Fanatics, right? And then Amazon. So how would you, in a world where competition is everywhere, right? And now AI making putting AI in the scenario, it's a lot easier to come up with a business overnight. So how do you set
Yeah.
yourself apart from competitors and brands that are doing the same thing as you, or trying to, at least?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, you know, it comes down to someone said this to me a couple weeks ago, and it's almost been my quote of at least the first month of 2024.
Hmm.
Narrow your focus to broaden your appeal. Now, what that means to me is, you want to start niche. So for us, we're starting with uh, artists who have already dipped their toe in Web3. So digital artists,
Hmm.
some music artists. Like we worked with this music artist named Arts. He's an independent artist in the industry that's worked with, other successful artists like Ari Lennox, Styles P, Trinidad James, Busta Rhymes. But he's
Wow.
also built a strong brand as being a forward thinker in digital art. So he's always had like an audio visual component to his creativity.
Hmm.
And he's always been at the forefront of what's happening in the NFT space.
Hmm.
So, you know, there's hundreds of artists and brands like him that we're looking to collaborate with,
Hmm.
and we're starting there because they immediately understand the potential of what we're doing, even
Hmm.
if we're still putting every single piece and feature together. Like they're open to working with emerging technology companies. But every problem that they have, I know that newsletter writers have, podcast co-hosts have,
Yeah.
influencers, TikTok creators, YouTubers, Twitch streamers, athlete influencers. Like I know they all have these similar problems around, building their brand, monetizing their community, right? But we don't want to turn them off with some of these other more intricate terms and aspects of our platform. So we want to build something that they can just jump in and don't have to think about, and it works like magic. So we start with a very niche community, right? We're building a brand here,
Hmm.
and we want to be more like, I think someone said this about like if Nike started like a hotel company, what kind of hotel a Nike hotel is going to be,
Yeah.
right? Like they have a very distinct brand and a very distinct style. And that's the
And you
same
can
thing
feel it.
with us. Yeah. Um, so you can tell that the heart of this company are creators and artists, or creator engineers, right?
Hmm.
Um, and that's going to be the DNA, um, for the brand.
Wow.
A lot of internet culture references with NPC,
Hmm.
right? And that's on purpose. Um, because we're a social commerce company at the end
Hmm.
of the day. So I designed the brand to be a very specific thing because when you can actually appeal to more people. If you try and just appeal to everyone on the onset, like
Yeah.
that's where most people go wrong, because then you don't create anything that anyone wants.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Going off on a little tangent, I saw that you met Kanye West. That's one of my favorite artists, so I'm kind of jealous, man. Like, how was that experience?
That was
Like,
surreal. Like that
really?
that was super duper surreal. So I, met him while we were doing a showcase at Art Basel.
Okay.
Miami 2023. And no one expected him to pull up. No one knew he was going to be in Miami that day.
Mm-hmm.
And we had actually put together all our collaborations for Art Basel Miami in the last like 3 to 4 weeks.
Okay.
We worked with a few different artists, including Arts, who I just mentioned, and we didn't get the invite to come speak at this event, Soulverse 2023, until 4 weeks out. Like we had no intention of even being at Art Basel. So we get all these collaborations together. We pull it to Miami. I hand sew the NFC chips into our. So we did this shirt collaboration. This was a shirt collaboration we did with Arts, right?
Oh,
Um,
sick.
right here, and that's
Okay.
the album Then I Met You. And then each
Okay.
shirt comes with this NFC chip that we worked with uniquely.io, which is one of our partners, to
Mm-hmm.
create the digital experience attached to the NFC chip. And this shirt
Awesome.
was a shirt
Sure.
we ended up giving Kanye. Yeah.
No
So
way. Okay.
we put all this together.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the last day of Art Basel, that Sunday, I think this was October 10th. No, sorry, December 10th.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we were at this dinner, actually brunch event with Trinidad James, who was the guest of honor. And he puts on this annual brunch with Arts called
Okay.
the Dad Brunch. So we were there chopping it up with everyone there. It's a VIP event. I got to show Trinidad James how the NFC technology works on these shirts.
Mm-hmm.
And we can do this for any product. And then Arts taps me on the shoulder and he's like, yo, like, I just got word that Kanye is across the street. Go go to the back and grab a t-shirt. So I jumped to the back like immediately and say no more.
Yeah. Yeah.
I go grab a large t-shirt. Um, and it was just me, Arts, and the cameraman. We pull up across the street. Kanye was at a Jamaican restaurant. It's the same restaurant that showed up on all the videos, and there were
Yeah.
snippets of him playing the album for different fans. It was that same restaurant.
Okay.
There was low security because I don't think anyone really knew he was there yet. But he also was just with no security, which is unusual.
Yeah.
Um, but he was like, doing his man of the people thing. And the security let us in at the door thanks to Arts.
Mm-hmm.
We had to leave everything but the camera and the shirt. Pull in. Arts says hi to him first, talks to him a little, says, this is my boy Bayo. I show him the shirt, tell him it's a gift. Didn't, fully showcase the NFC part, but I told him about it. And then, Arts dapped him up. They got it all on camera. And we pulled up out of there. And like, it was like a 5-minute encounter, but it was enough. And it was surreal for me because, yeah, like, whether you like him or hate him, Ye has touched a lot of artists through his discography and his work.
Yeah.
He's definitely a creative idol for Arts, the artist that we collaborated with. And through
Mm-hmm.
Yeezy, he's definitely a creative inspiration, right? The Yeezy brand is, what
Awesome.
has that sort of cultural impact through its forward-looking products that NPC wants to have, right?
Yeah.
We want to design better than Yeezy, right? We want to create products that live and grow with our consumers
Mm-hmm.
and that impact culture. So
Yeah.
that's, it was a big moment for us.
Wow, that's that push, that little push you need to like, yeah, we're almost there. We just gotta keep going. I was actually
Yeah.
I was watching a video on Kanye and just how much he's like shifted the culture, um,
Hmm.
with design, with art, with music. It shows like comparisons of like where he would wear a bomber jacket, and then the streetwear industry went crazy with bomber jackets, or Chelsea boots, or now even the Yeezy shoes. I go outside, I go to the mall, and I'm like, that's Kanye inspired for sure. To even seeing Elon Musk, he's in an interview, and he was asked, "Who inspires you?" And he's like, "Kanye West, of course." We talk about the richest man in the world. Be inspired, so it's hard not to be inspired by him. Uh, that's crazy,
Yeah,
dude. Crazy.
yeah,
Free ticket, hopefully.
yeah. I think Elon said Kanye has the most empathetic approach to
Mhm.
consumer products that he's ever seen, where it's like he knows what people want. He
Yeah,
does, and he knows what people want. But he also tests boundaries. Like I heard from one of his product designers that they had a rule after some time, like no laces on the sneakers, and that was the constraint. Like, let's create
yeah,
sneakers where laces don't matter because you don't want to be in the middle of church service singing in the choir and you have to tie your laces or something. I think that was the quote.
yeah,
But I just think that's the type of thinking differently.
yeah.
At if you go all the way back to like Steve Jobs and Apple,
Just
same
about to
sort
say,
of thinking that
yeah.
inspired like product innovation.
hmm constantly just pushing, and then pushing your team along, and then having that why and that mission statement to be able to have that culture around your business to be able to do that. Um, wow, yeah, true visionary, man.
For sure.
Um, yeah, crazy. Anyway,
Yeah.
how was Art Basel, man? I haven't been yet.
Oh yeah. I mean, it was eye opening. It's a huge event, not just for artists but also for entrepreneurs.
hmm
So while I was down there, we met with a few uh, of our brand partners that we collaborated with, like
hmm
Transient Labs. They were down there doing an event with Maker's Place that we went to. That was really good. And then we also got the opportunity to shoot interviews
hmm
with all the artists that we collaborate with. So we have about like 5 unreleased interviews. Um, but the products that we did created for those collaborations are available at mpc.store right now.
Okay.
So it's live. But yeah, we're going to be releasing those interviews. Then, that like weekend we did a panel for teaching up and coming artists and brands how to scale like their business into global franchises.
Okay.
And I got to speak alongside my friend Chris Moy, who's a entertainment attorney and full stack developer.
Oh,
Um, his one of the most impressive things about him for me is that he's never cheated an artist in like 30 years of being in the entertainment industry, which is unheard of for the generation that he comes from. Um, and then we arts moderated the panel, the artists that we collaborated with. So that was awesome. That was couldn't have gone better. Got to see a lot of happy, collaborators that weekend, and it was sort of like a coming out for NPC Labs too.
yeah.
Like a combination of months of work to showcase what we've built and where we're going. And then the icing on the cake was that final day meeting, Trinidad James and Kanye West right before we left. And we had
Yeah.
extended our flight that day, right? So it by all intents and purposes, it shouldn't have even occurred. It was like a glitch in the matrix.
Yeah.
So that was a great weekend. I'll definitely be going back to Art Basel probably every year. until they get
Yeah.
sick of me.
You
Yeah.
see me there this year, hopefully
Yeah,
this time around.
yeah. Yeah, we
Um,
can.
yeah, we'll go out for sure. Did you always know you were going to be an entrepreneur, or was that kind of just what happened?
Huh. I didn't know actually until I actually thought I knew I was gonna be an investor before I knew I was gonna be an entrepreneur because
Mm.
I remember in like elementary school, and I don't know why I said this, but our teacher asked everyone what they wanted to be, and like I raised my hand and said angel investor, and I had no clue what that was.
Yeah,
So I knew that, okay, angel investor, whatever that means. I'd read this book called The Richest Man in Babylon, which was all
great book.
about the archetype of a person who's like a a generous philanthropist, but also like, you know, an investor and a mover of industry, and he follows like a common set of principles that you know kind of gives him a competitive advantage. One of those principles in that book was uh, the goddess of luck favor men of action. Um, so those things sort of stuck with me. I'm like, okay, how do I get that get into that pocket? And then I had started reading biographies from famous entrepreneurs. I read Steve Jobs' biography before I went to
Mhm.
Princeton, and I read uh, Zero to One by Peter Thiel.
Great
I
book.
read Elon Musk's biography. I read The Everything Store about Jeff Bezos, one of my favorite books.
Mhm.
Um, and those things laid the seed. So then, like my freshman year of college, I'm like, I want to be a technical co-founder of like $1 billion startup just because I read all these books. And
Yeah,
again, I didn't know the detail of what that meant, but I just started walking in that direction. And I remembered in Steve Jobs' book, he said, uh, the dots don't connect unless you look backwards. Like you really never know how these things are going to play out in your life, right? But when you look backwards, it starts to all make sense and you can see how the dots connect.
exactly.
So his prescription was just to follow your intuitions. And
Mm.
that's what I always did. I just followed the next thing that made sense for me at that point.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing, man. That's amazing. What was your
Thank
what was that book that kind of just gave you? You listed a lot of books, but what was that number one book that kind of just hit it home for you?
you. Yeah, I think for startups, um, Zero to One by Peter Thiel.
Okay.
Uh, he's another, depending on who you ask, people love him or hate him. But I think
Yeah.
he's, certifiable genius. He was the first investor in Facebook, the founder of PayPal and Palantir.
Mhm.
Um, and, he also studied philosophy as an undergrad. That's one of the reasons I decided to study philosophy after switching from engineering. The other reason is Carl Icahn. He was, another Princeton legend, and an investor, and now an activist investor. Um, and Zero to One, though, taught me that, it just dispelled a lot of misconceptions about startups for me.
Mhm.
It told me that it's hard. Like, I think a lot of people think that, uh, oh, yeah, like, you're going to have like a killer idea and then the stars are going to align and then it's all going to work out. Um, there's like the distance between Zero to One is a treacherous journey. right?
Yes.
And you got to have, you know, you got to be clever and you got to have resilience.
Mm-hmm.
And the cleverness of Zero to One to me was that he was talking about how, you know, a lot of this is counterintuitive. Like, you don't want to build where there's competition. You want to create like a monopoly in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, a moat that makes it very hard to compete with whatever it is you're developing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so more from like a mindset, it changed my mindset in terms of how to build a
Mm-hmm.
successful company. And then he also has a very um, long-term view of things. Another book that I love is The Everything Store for that reason,
Mm-hmm.
because Mr. Bezos, when he was developing Amazon, you know, was always seeing like 10 to 20 years ahead of everybody. And
Yeah.
he was very patient with, okay, if we get it right, then, you know, it's going to get to the point where the compounding effect of us being right is just going to lead to exponential growth and opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So he was very thoughtful about taking a long term view to everything and making sure, like, you know, this is a strategy that will work on a 20-year horizon versus people just want to get through the year.
Yeah.
Um, so all of those things form the current mindset that I have today.
Beautiful, man. Beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, it's been a pleasure. And we're coming towards the end right now. Um, is there anything that you would want to leave with our guests or our
Hmm.
audience to watch and listen in?
Yeah. You know, if you're thinking about building a company or an idea, um, I recommend getting exposure. So what that meant for me was I had a lot of ideas my freshman year at college, but I decided to take like this 7 year VC detour, not
Mm-hmm.
because like, you know, those were bad ideas, but because I didn't know what could go wrong yet. Um, and it was helpful to be by entrepreneurs like a fly on the wall and an apprentice and take like that apprenticeship approach to life for a bit so I could absorb, you know, their styles. Um, and, you know, whether that's becoming the first hire of a startup on campus or becoming, you know, the first few employees at an emerging tech fund or an emerging ecosystem, right? Just go to where there's growth, right? And, you know, potential. Try and bet early on it and just sit there, observe, and learn. And you'll have the benefit of compounding relationships and compounding success, you know,
Mm-hmm.
many years later. So it's almost like an intermediary step to jumping all the way in if you're a little bit um, concerned about like what could, you know, that could mean for your trajectory. Like,
Yeah.
just be the first hire or the first backer of someone crazier than you, and that was helpful for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Amazing, man. Amazing. Um,
Thank you.
thank you guys. Thank you for joining me, man. This has been a pleasure as always. Um, yeah, as we wrap up another lighting episode of Cortex Labs, I want to extend my gratitude to our listeners and the brilliant minds shaping the future. If you enjoyed today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe or like, share wherever we post this. Stay connected, stay inspired, and stay tuned for the next episode where we continue our journey at the intersection of technology and innovation. Until then, this is Matthew Smith signing off from Cortex Labs. Keep innovating. Peace.